Have you ever felt it? That moment when the world seems to hold its breath and you realize you've crossed a line you can't uncross. It's as if time slows and you're left alone with the echo of your own choices, wondering how you got here. That certainty you've gone too far, made a mistake so big there's no coming back. The weight of regret settles in your chest, heavy and unyielding, and you replay every decision that led you to this place, wishing you could rewrite just one moment. You convince yourself forgiveness is for others, not for you, not for this. The idea of mercy feels distant, reserved for those who haven't fallen as far as you have. You start to believe you're the exception to grace, the one who's gone too far. You believe you've crossed a line, burned a bridge, and now must live in the ruins you created. Every step forward feels like wandering through a wasteland of your own making, haunted by memories of what once was. This feeling is a prison, whispering that you're unworthy, defined by your worst moment. The bars aren't made of steel but of shame and self-doubt, and they're just as strong. It's a lonely exile where you're both prisoner and guard. You keep yourself locked away, convinced that isolation is the only punishment fitting for your mistakes. Imagine standing at a crossroads, knowing you chose wrong, haunted by faces you left behind. The road ahead is unclear, and the path back seems impossible, blocked by guilt and fear. The shame is a weight, and you keep walking deeper into the wilderness, convinced you're an outcast. Each step feels heavier than the last, as if the world itself is pushing you further away from hope. You carry memories like stones in your pocket, reminders of what you've lost and who you used to be. The silence around you grows, and you wonder if anyone even remembers your name. But our story begins here. Not with the mistake, but in the aftermath, believing you're lost. Because sometimes, it's in the emptiest moments that the first seeds of hope are planted, quietly, almost invisibly. It's about a young man who threw everything away, convinced he was beyond redemption. He believed his story was over, that he'd written the final chapter with his own hands. But life has a way of surprising us. Even in the darkest places, a glimmer of light can break through. Sometimes the smallest act of courage is simply daring to hope again. Because sometimes, the point we think is the end is just the beginning of the journey back to grace. And every journey, no matter how lost it seems, can find its way home. He was the younger son, restless and longing for more. Every day he gazed out the window, his mind wandering far beyond the familiar fields and quiet routines of home. The world outside seemed to call to him, promising adventure, excitement, and a life unburdened by expectations. He felt trapped, as if his dreams were too big for the small world he inhabited. His father's home felt like a cage, routines like bars holding him back. The comfort and safety that once felt warm now seemed suffocating. Each day was predictable, each moment mapped out by tradition and duty. He yearned to break free, to write his own story, to find out who he could become away from the shadow of his family. He saw his inheritance as a ticket to freedom, not future security. To him, it was more than money. It was the key to unlocking a new life, a chance to chase dreams he'd only dared to imagine. He believed that with enough resources, he could finally escape the boundaries that held him back. So, he asked his father for his share, a shocking, painful request. The words hung heavy in the air, echoing through the house. It was as if he was saying he couldn't wait for his father to be gone, that he valued his own desires above the bonds of family. The request cut deep, wounding both father and son in ways neither could fully express. The father, heartbroken, gave it to him. With trembling hands, he divided what he had built over a lifetime, offering it to his son with a mixture of sorrow and love. He hoped, perhaps, that this act of generosity would one day be understood, even if it meant letting go. The young man felt triumphant, packed quickly, and left without looking back. His heart raced with anticipation, his mind filled with visions of freedom. He didn't pause to consider what he was leaving behind, or the pain etched on his father's face. All he could see was the open road ahead. He was running toward a fantasy, convinced true life was elsewhere. Every step away from home felt like a victory, a move closer to the life he believed he deserved. The world seemed full of promise, and he was determined to seize it, no matter the cost. He didn't see he was leaving the one place he was fully known and loved. The empty chair at the family table, the silent ache in his father's eyes, these were invisible to him, lost in the excitement of his escape. He mistook love for limitation, not realizing the depth of what he was abandoning. The great escape had begun, each step taking him further from home. The road stretched out before him, full of unknowns. He felt invincible, certain that happiness waited just beyond the horizon. But with every mile, the distance between him and his family grew, both in body and in spirit. He chased a glittering illusion, blind to the cost. The city lights dazzled him, the promise of pleasure and success blinding him to the emptiness that often hides behind such brightness. He believed he was finally living, unaware that he was losing himself in the process. He didn't say goodbye. He couldn't face what he was leaving. In the quiet of night, he slipped away, unable to bear the weight of his family's love or the pain of their disappointment. He thought it would be easier this way, but the silence only deepened the ache. He believed freedom was out there, not realizing he was abandoning unconditional love. The world ahead was uncertain, but he clung to the hope that it would bring fulfillment. He didn't yet understand that true freedom is found not in running away, but in being truly known and accepted. The journey away from home was the start of his greatest lesson. As he walked further into the unknown, he was about to discover that the answers he sought could not be found in distant places, but in the love he left behind. The Great Escape was only the beginning of a much deeper story. In the distant city, he was a whirlwind. Money made him popular, parties endless. He lived for the moment, never thinking about tomorrow. But the inheritance drained away faster than he imagined. Friends vanished as quickly as they'd appeared. Alone and broke, a famine struck, turning the city into a place of desperation. He'd traded a legacy for fleeting pleasure, security for fair-weather friends. The high life collapsed, regret and emptiness remained. The freedom he chased became a prison of poverty and shame. He hit rock bottom, discovering it had a basement. The party was over and reality was harsh. He was left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret. The world he'd imagined was a lie. Now he faced the consequences of his choices. Desperation drove him to feed pigs, a job unthinkable for him. He was stripped of dignity, status, and identity. Hunger gnawed at him. He longed to eat the pigs' food, but no one gave him anything. Once a host of feasts, now invisible and forgotten. Surrounded by filth, the weight of his choices crashed down. This was the freedom he'd craved, empty and soul-crushing. He'd become a servant, longing for pig food. The vibrant life he imagined was gone. Reality was unforgiving. Alone and ashamed, he finally saw his situation clearly. No more blaming others. He faced the consequences of his own actions. In the mud and misery, a moment of painful self-awareness dawned. This was the first step on the long journey home. In a rare moment of clarity, he remembered his father's house, the warmth, the laughter, the simple abundance that once filled every room. Even the servants, he recalled, never went hungry. The memory stung, a sharp contrast to the emptiness he now felt, both in his stomach and his soul. He realized how far he had fallen, how much he had lost, and how desperately he longed for the comfort of home. With heavy steps, he decided to return, not as a son, but as a beggar for mercy. He knew he had no right to claim his old place, no reason to expect forgiveness. Yet, the hope for a second chance, however slim, was enough to set him on the path back. He imagined himself among the servants, working quietly in the background, grateful just to be near the life he once took for granted. The thought of being a servant, rather than a son, was humbling. But it was more than he deserved, and more than he dared hope for. The journey back meant swallowing his pride and facing the shame of his choices. Every step was a reminder of his mistakes, each mile a confrontation with regret. He wondered if he would ever be able to forgive himself, even if his father could. He imagined the judgmental stares of those who'd seen him leave, the whispers and sideways glances from neighbors who remembered his arrogance. The fear of their scorn pressed down on him, making each step heavier than the last. Fear of rejection was immense, but he started walking. The road ahead was uncertain, but staying in his misery was no longer an option. With trembling resolve, he put one foot in front of the other, determined to face whatever awaited him. Along the way, he rehearsed his speech over and over. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." He practiced the words until they felt real, until the weight of his guilt was laid bare in every syllable. He returned with no demands, only a broken spirit and a plea for grace. He knew he could offer nothing but his remorse, and he hoped it would be enough to open the door, even just a crack. This was a pilgrimage of repentance, a journey that moved him from pride to humility, from self-reliance to surrender. Each sunrise brought a new chance to reflect, to let go of the past, and to hope for forgiveness. He didn't know what awaited him at the end of the road. Would his father turn him away? Would the door remain closed? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he knew he couldn't stay where he was, not if he wanted to live. The memory of his father's house, the echo of laughter and the glow of light in the windows pulled him forward. It was a beacon in the darkness, a reminder of what he had lost and what he still hoped to find. Each step was a step away from self-reliance, away from the illusions that had led him astray, and toward hope. He left behind the broken pieces of his old life, determined to build something new, even if it meant starting from nothing. The long road home was more than a journey across fields and roads. It was a journey of the heart, a test of faith, and a search for redemption. With every step, he moved closer to forgiveness and to the possibility of being welcomed home once more. As he walked, anxiety grew. What if he was rejected? He pictured his father's disappointment, his brother's scorn. His only shield was his rehearsed confession, "I have sinned, I'm not worthy." He expected justice, not grace, punishment, not welcome. He was ready to earn his way back, to live on the fringes. Love and forgiveness seemed impossible. He braced for the consequences he believed he deserved. Like many of us, he built walls to protect against pain. He was walking home, but in his heart he was still trapped in shame. He expected condemnation, not restoration. But while he was still far off, his father saw him. The father wasn't angry, he was waiting, watching, filled with compassion. He ran to his son, undignified, urgent, love overcoming all restraint. Before the son could finish his apology, the father embraced him. The son stammered, "Father, I have sinned. I'm not worthy." The father cut him off, calling for the best robe, a ring, sandals. These were signs of honor, belonging, and freedom, not servitude. The father didn't just forgive, he restored his son completely. "Let's celebrate. My son was lost and is found." The father's joy overshadowed the son's sin. The welcome was based on love, not worthiness. The rejection he feared never came. Instead, he was swept up in a tidal wave of grace. The embrace was unconditional, the restoration total. The journey home ended in a celebration, not condemnation. We are all the prodigal at times, lost, ashamed, convinced we're too far gone. We've stood in our own pigsties feeling the weight of our choices, but the story shows us God's heart, a waiting Father, full of compassion. He runs to meet us not with a list of wrongs, but with open arms. This is grace, unearned, undeserved, a gift. We expect justice. He gives us a party. The Father's love is radical, erasing the past, restoring identity. No one is too far gone. No mistake exhausts God's grace. The journey home ends not with a review, but with an embrace. Grace doesn't just pardon, it restores. We don't have to earn our way back. The welcome is already waiting. It's an invitation to accept the love that's always been there. The Prodigal Son's story is an open invitation for anyone who feels lost. It speaks to those haunted by regret, convinced they're unworthy of love. The door to the Father's house is never locked. You don't need the right words or to clean yourself up first. Just take the first step. The Father is already watching, ready to run to you. Grace is a constant reality, not a one-time offer. Your worst day doesn't define you. The Father's love does. The celebration is waiting. The feast is ready. Let go of shame, turn toward home, and accept the welcome. The journey back to grace begins with a single step.